Hey there, deep divers. Welcome back to the show. Today we're going to dive into something pretty wild. Alien minds. It's always been one of those big questions out there. Are we alone in the universe? And if not, what are those alien minds like? How do they see the world? Luckily, a listener sent in this fascinating article by Stephen Wolfram. It's called Generative AI Space and the Mental Imagery of Alien Minds.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. It's a real head trip. Wolfram basically uses AI image generation to explore how different minds might see.
Exactly. And he makes this really cool point right off the bat. He says trying to imagine an alien mind, it's like trying to imagine a new color you've never seen before. But maybe AI can give us a glimpse, kind of sneak peek into those other ways of perceiving reality.
Yeah, it's like we're using AI as a tool to expand our own imaginations, to break out of our human-centric way of thinking about intelligence and perception.
And speaking of breaking out, Wolfram takes us on a wild ride with this. One of the things he does is he takes an AI, one of these systems that's been trained on billions of images and can generate all sorts of crazy stuff. And he starts with something simple, like a picture of a cat wearing a party hat.
Okay, I'm picturing it now. What does he do? Turns it into a Picasso.
Kind of, but weirder.
Mm-hmm.
He starts tweaking the AI's parameters, like messing with the knobs and dials of its brain. And as he does that, the images of the cat start to change. They get stranger and more abstract.
I've seen some of those AI-generated images. They can be pretty out there. So what did the cat turn into? Like a blob of colors?
A bunch of geometric shapes.
Some of them were kind of like that, yeah. But others were like nothing I could even describe. They were just
Wow.
alien. And that's exactly Wolfram's point.
Wow.
He's basically saying that by messing with the AI's parameters, he's simulating how a mind with a completely different set of attractors might see the world.
Attractors. Now, hold on. What are those exactly? This is where I always get a little lost with Wolfram. Yeah, he can be a bit dense sometimes. But basically, attractors are like these stable patterns that our minds gravitate towards. Think of it like this. When you see a chair, you instantly recognize it as a chair, right?
Right.
That's because your brain has formed an attractor for the concept of a chair. It's a pattern of neurons firing in a specific way.
Okay, I think I'm following. So is Wolfram saying that these AIs have attractors too?
Exactly. And just like our brains, the AI's attractors are shaped by its experiences. In the AI's case, it's those billions of images it was trained on. But by changing the AI's parameters, Wolfram is essentially rewiring its attractors.
Hmm.
He's giving it a whole new set of experiences, which leads to those bizarre alien images.
That's pretty mind-blowing. So we're not just looking at random computer-generated images here. We're looking at potential glimpses into how a completely different kind of mind might interpret visual information.
You got it. And it gets even weirder because Wolfram doesn't stop at just tweaking the AI's existing attractors. He goes a step further and starts generating images from what he calls interconcept space.
Interconcept space. Now that sounds like something straight out of Star Trek. What is that?
I know, right? It's like the name of a new warp drive or something.
Mhm.
But basically, Wolfram uses it to describe this vast realm of potential images that are statistically possible but don't correspond to anything we have words for in our language.
So things that are so alien, our brains literally can't even comprehend them.
Pretty much. And this is where those AI images get really wild. Because when Wolfram prompts the AI to create images from this interconcept space, it generates these incredibly bizarre and often unsettling images that are like nothing you've ever seen before.
Like what? Give me an example. I'm dying to know what this interconcept space looks like.
Well, in the article, he shows a bunch of these images, and it's hard to describe them with words.
Yeah.
But there's this one that really stuck with me. It's like a landscape, but with these impossible twisted trees and a sky filled with these swirling patterns of color.
Okay, that actually sounds kind of beautiful in a trippy sort of way.
Yeah, it is kind of beautiful,
Hmm.
but also really unsettling because you can sense that there's some kind of logic or order to it,
Mm.
but it's a logic that's completely alien to our human way of thinking.
So what's Wolfram's takeaway from all of this? Is he saying that these AI images are literally what aliens see?
He's careful not to make that claim directly, but he does suggest that by exploring this interconcept space, we're essentially expanding our own rulial space, which is his term for the space of all possible minds and their perspective.
Rulial space. Okay, now I'm really lost. Okay. Yeah, rulial space. I think I need a little help wrapping my head around that one.
I hear you. It's one of those Wolframisms that takes a minute to unpack, but stick with me here. So imagine like a giant map,
Mm.
right? But instead of countries and continents, this map represents all possible minds. Think every way of thinking, every way of perceiving the world.
Okay, that's a pretty big map. We're talking like bigger than the universe big.
Way bigger. The universe is just one tiny point on this map.
Oh,
This is
really?
like map of all possible realities. Big.
Yeah. Okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this. So, rulial space, it's like the ultimate landscape of thought.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And every mind, human, alien, AI, whatever, occupies a specific point in that space. And the thing is, our position in rulial space, it's determined by our attractors. Those patterns of thought that shape how we see the world.
So you're saying that by changing the AI's attractors, Wolfram is basically moving it around on this map of all possible minds.
Bingo. And the images the AI generates, those are like postcards from its journey through rulial space. They're glimpses into how reality might look from a completely different vantage point.
Okay, that's actually a really cool way to think about it. So those bizarre alien images, they're not just random noise.
Exactly. They're expressions of a different kind of logic, a different way of making sense of the world. And here's the really mind-blowing part. Wolfram believes that by exploring this rulial space, by pushing the boundaries of what AI can imagine, we might actually stumble upon new forms of knowledge, new ways of understanding the universe that are currently beyond our human comprehension.
So like those AI images might contain hidden truths that we just don't have the mental software to decode yet.
That's the idea. It's like we're trying to understand our radio broadcast in a language we've never heard before.
It's both exciting and a little terrifying at the same time.
Totally. But to really grasp the full implications of what Wolfram's talking about, we need to dive into how these AI systems actually work, because he gets into some pretty wild stuff about the nature of computation and reality itself.
Okay, I'm game. Let's do it. Hit me with your best, Wolfram.
All right, so you know how these AI image generators are all the rage these days?
Yeah, who hasn't wasted an afternoon creating weird images of themselves as like a medieval knight or something?
Exactly. But what most people don't realize is that these systems are based on a really mind-bending process called stable diffusion.
Stable diffusion. Sounds more like a weather pattern than an AI technique.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But bear with me. So imagine taking a perfectly clear image and then just blasting it with static, like an old TV with the antenna on the fritz.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right, so that's what this process of stable diffusion does. But in reverse, it starts with pure visual noise and then systematically dials down the static, revealing a hidden image step by step.
So it's like taking that blurry, staticky mess and slowly sharpening it. But instead of a fancy Instagram filter, the AI is using its memory of billions of images to guide the process.
You got it. And here's the key. The AI isn't storing those billions of images like snapshots in a photo album. It's distilled the essence of them, the underlying patterns that make a cat look like a cat, a mountain look like a mountain. It's learned the visual rules of the game, so to speak.
So then it uses those rules, those patterns, to build new images, even if those images end up looking like nothing we've ever seen before.
Exactly. It's almost as if those rules contain the seeds of infinite possibilities, some of which might lead us straight into that interconcept space we're exploring.
Okay, now my brain is starting to hurt a little, but in a good way.
I hear you. It's a lot to wrap your head around. But this is where it gets really interesting. Because Wolfram connects these AI systems back to our own brains. He suggests that our minds might be using a similar process of attractors in rulial space to understand the world around us.
Wait, so you're saying our brains are basically running their own version of this stable diffusion all the time?
That's what he's suggesting. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it. Our brains are constantly bombarded with sensory information.
Right.
But we don't perceive the world as this chaotic jumble of sights and sounds and smells. Our brains are constantly filtering and organizing that information, creating a coherent narrative that we experience as reality.
So you're saying that what we perceive as objective reality is actually just our brain's best guess at what's actually out there?
In a way, yes. It's like our brains are running a simulation. The simulation is based on our past experiences, our beliefs or expectations.
Okay, that's a bit unsettling, but also kind of cool. So you're saying that everyone's reality is slightly different?
Exactly. We're all living in our own custom-made simulations. And the really wild part is that Wolfram believes we can use AI to explore the nature of these simulations, to understand how they're created and how they differ from person to person.
So these AI images, they're not just about alien minds. They're about the very nature of mind itself.
Exactly. And maybe even the nature of reality itself. You know, it's funny thinking about all this stuff about alien minds and AI, and it really makes you wonder about our own assumptions about intelligence, right?
Totally. Like, we tend to think of intelligence as something that's measured by, like, IQ tests and how well you can do math or whatever.
Right. Like our definition of intelligence is very human-centric.
Exactly. But what if there are other ways of being intelligent? Other ways of processing information and understanding the world?
Like what we were saying earlier about those AI images.
Hmm.
They might be expressions of a kind of intelligence that we just don't have the capacity to grasp yet.
Right. Like, imagine trying to explain the concept of the internet to, like, a caveman.
Or like trying to explain quantum physics to a dog.
Exactly. They just wouldn't have the framework to even begin to understand what you're talking about.
And maybe that's what we're doing when we look at those AI images and say, oh, that's just random noise.
Or that's just a bunch of pretty colors. Yeah, we're dismissing them because they don't fit into our narrow definition of what's meaningful or intelligent.
Right. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Maybe the most important thing we can learn from these AI systems isn't about alien minds at all, but about the limits of our own.
It's like that saying about the fish in the tree, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree.
It'll spend its whole life thinking it's stupid.
Exactly. And maybe that's what we're doing with intelligence. We're judging it by our own limited human standards.
When there might be a whole ocean of other ways of being intelligent out there.
An ocean of intelligence that we're just beginning to glimpse thanks to these AI systems.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it?
It is, but also incredibly exciting. Because it means that our understanding of intelligence, of consciousness, of reality itself, it's not static. It's evolving.
It's like we're standing on the edge of a whole new frontier of knowledge.
And who knows what amazing discoveries await us on the other side.
Well said. So for all of you deep divers out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep your minds open to the possibility that the universe is even stranger and more wonderful than we can possibly imagine.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. But don't worry, we'll be back soon with more mind-bending explorations of the unknown. Until then, keep diving deep, everyone.